All episodes of A Trial by Podcast are for informational and entertainment purposes only. Much to their parents' dismay, neither host is a lawyer, journalist, or investigator. Just two people with microphones and Wi-Fi. All actions discussed are alleged, and all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. For the full legal mumbo-jumbo, check the show notes.
On Valentine's Day 2009, Tiana Angelique Notice, a 25-year-old woman from Plainville, Connecticut, was tragically stabbed to death outside of her apartment. For Tiana's family, this day marked the devastating end of a prolonged nightmare of stalking and fear. Just 5 weeks and 2 days before her murder, Tiana had been granted a restraining order against her ex-boyfriend, James Carter II. Now, from the moment she filed for that order to the day of her death, Tiana had reported Carter to the police 33 times, desperately seeking help. Carter's behavior was becoming increasingly erratic, and he had violated that restraining order multiple times. Yet, despite Tiana's repeated pleas and her insistence that she was in imminent danger, law enforcement continued to tell her that there was nothing they could do. On the final full day of her life, Tiana reportedly confronted one of these officers, asking them in frustration, "What is it going to take before you guys do something? When I'm dead?" And tragically, it seems like that's exactly what it took, because the very next day, Tiana's life was cut short. So how could this happen? How was Tiana so egregiously failed by those entrusted to protect her? And most importantly, what can be done to ensure that no one else suffers the same fate?
Meet the computer you can talk to. With Copilot on Windows, working, creating, and collaborating is as easy as talking. Got writer's block? Share your screen with Copilot Vision to help spark inspiration, and use Copilot Voice to have a conversation and brainstorm ideas. Or maybe you need some tech help. With Copilot Vision, Copilot sees what you see. Let Copilot talk you through step-by-step guidance so you can master new apps, games, and skills faster. Try now at windows.com/Copilot.
Say hello to the all-new Alexa Plus and see how Alexa can do so much more for you. Need tickets to see your favorite artist? Craving your comfort restaurant? Just sit back, relax, and talk naturally. Alexa's on it. It learns your style, anticipates what's next, and makes it happen across Echo, Fire TV, and more. Learn more at amazon.com/new Alexa.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar, zero patience for slow walkers, those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night, have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by Blink. Doom scrolling during this ad break? Ditch the doom and get peace of mind with new Blink 2K Plus Smart Security. Check on home from your phone with 2K Clarity, noise cancellation, and 4x Zoom. Plus, setup is so simple, you can easily install while listening to your favorite podcast. True crime girlies, we got you. Get more, spend less with Blink 2K Plus Smart Security.
Welcome back, everybody. It is your host, Kelsey. I do have my sister-in-law, Katie, back for the episode today, but between the time that we recorded today's episode and the time when it's about to release, some new stuff has happened that I wanted to talk with you guys about. So I'm just adding in a little segment here in the beginning. So number one, Spotify Wrapped came out last week, and Spotify Wrapped it's my Super Bowl. It is the thing I look forward to the most every year. I love seeing all of our numbers. I love seeing all of you guys posting us in your top 5. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone if we were on your Spotify Wrapped, or if we weren't on your Spotify Wrapped, or you don't listen on Spotify. Just thank you so much for listening all year. I truly, truly love doing this podcast, and I couldn't do it without you guys listening. I love what we're doing this month, raising money for the Sierra Vince Foundation, and I could not do that without you guys listening. So I truly appreciate it. I think overall, you guys listened for 20 years. There was 20 years of listening time, which is fucking crazy. And I can't wait to see what it's going to be next year. So I just wanted to say thank you. I also wanted to give you guys a reminder up front that this month we are raising money for the Sierra Vince Foundation. They are a domestic violence focused organization. So throughout the month of December 2025, I will be donating half of my podcast ad revenue, half of my TikTok creator fund revenue, and then 100% of merch profits to the Sierra Vince Foundation. There's also going to be a link in the show notes where you guys can donate directly if you so choose. But if you don't have any extra money to donate, don't worry about it. There are other ways you can help. Number one, you can let a couple extra ads play through as you listen to the podcast. So we only get paid for ads that you guys listen to. If you skip ahead, we don't get paid for them, which is totally fine. I don't listen to every single ad when I listen to podcasts either, so don't worry. But that's just one of the ways that you can help support the foundation this month. The more ads that you guys listen to, the more money we'll bring in, and the more that will be donated to the Sierra Vince Foundation. And that goes for any episodes that you guys listen to during the month of December. It doesn't just have to be the new episodes. Anything you listen to, you could listen to episode 1. And if you let ads play through, that will also help. The other thing you can do is if you have TikTok, you can go like and share our posts. I don't know what is happening, guys, but I'm like in TikTok jail right now for some reason. Like everything that I've posted all week has gotten like a few hundred views, which normally at the very least, I get a few thousand views on all of my posts. And this is like the worst month for me to be in TikTok jail. So if anyone has TikTok, if you could please go to my profile and it's at a trial by podcast, please share our posts, share the most recent videos. I don't know what is happening. I think it's because I've been trying to push the boundaries on like words you can use on TikTok, like instead of saying unalive, saying killed and things like that. And yeah, I shouldn't push boundaries, I've learned with TikTok, because I'm being punished and I don't know how to get back in the good graces of the TikTok gods. So anything you guys can do to like and share and interact and comment with our posts on TikTok would not only be helpful for the Sierra Vince Foundation, because the more views I get on TikTok, the more money I'm going to make through TikTok and the more I'm going to donate, but it would also just be helpful to my my mental state and my will to keep it moving with everything, because TikTok is the most frustrating app I've ever used. Okay, so that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Let's get into it. We're going to get in the story, get into the original recording. So welcome back to the pod, everybody. I am your host, Kelsey, and I am back here with my angel sister-in-law, Katie.
It's me.
It's Katie, and we are back for a third time. You know why? Because we recorded part 2 the night before Katie was leaving for vacation, and she was so busy and packing and getting the kids ready and all of this stuff, and she took the time to record with me, and I didn't have the mics plugged in. So Katie has already heard everything you are about to hear, but it has been a couple weeks now, so I think it's going to be a refresher. And yeah, so we're here again. Everybody say thank you, Katie, for being a sweet angel.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm so grateful for you. And so just to give everyone kind of a recap on where we left off last time. Mm-hmm. So we are talking about the story of Tiana Notice, who basically had filed a restraining order against her ex-boyfriend, James Carter II. Mm-hmm. And in the following 5.5 weeks, she had contacted police 33 separate times about James Carter, and she was obviously in fear for her life. The day before she was murdered, she went to the police station to report him calling her work all the time, and they were basically, you know, pretty standoffish about it with her, and she had asked them, you know, what is it going to take for you guys to take me seriously? Something along those lines. And she said, when I'm dead. And the very next day, she would be murdered. So that's kind of where we left off last week. What we're going to talk about this week is the investigation, because there is an investigation, even though it's pretty obvious who did this. And if you remember, Tiana had actually told the 911 operator on the phone that her ex-boyfriend was stabbing her. So it's pretty obvious, but there still is an investigation. And then obviously, you know, a trial and everything. And one of the most important things, I think, is what changes after this case. I think they, you know, learned a lot of lessons about how domestic violence situations should be handled and how these types of reports should not be handled, just based on the way that they handled them with Tiana.
Yeah, for sure.
So from the very start, there was no mystery about who had committed this heinous crime. This is literally everything I just said. I'm so sorry. Tiana herself had named James Carter II as her attacker in her dying 911 call. And that crucial piece of evidence, known legally as a dying declaration, would later be admissible in court and carry enormous weight with the jury, of course. But on the night of the murder, it served a more immediate purpose. It pointed police directly to their suspect. And within minutes of arriving at the crime scene and conferring with witnesses, Plainville police broadcast an alert to find 28-year-old James Carter II of Bloomfield, Connecticut. And all police units in the region were now on the hunt for James. Investigators began processing the scene outside of Tiana's apartment. The wireless security camera that Alvin had installed was recovered by the Connecticut State Police. And remember, Alvin is her father.
Yes.
So they recovered the camera, and tragically, the camera had not captured clear video evidence of the stabbing itself. Now, it did record some valuable evidence, however. So I don't even know if it's tragic that it didn't get that on camera because...
Maybe it's for the best.
Yes.
Yeah.
The audio of Tiana's screams was caught on tape, underscoring the timeline of the attack. Additionally, the video reportedly showed some of Tiana's final moments, footage of her running and collapsing with a shadowy figure briefly visible pursuing her, though the actual attack itself did happen out of the camera's frame. Investigators also found in Tiana's car a folder containing printouts of James's threatening emails and a copy of the restraining order. Tiana had been keeping this evidence close at hand, likely to show police or to show the court.
The next time she has to go to another police department and report him for something.
Right. And actually, the morning of her murder, she did go back to the police station as well. I believe this time it was to the Plainville police to make another report of everything that was happening.
Wow.
And so she still had some of this evidence, in her car. Like, it just kind of shows you, it just paints like this picture of Tiana knowing that she was in danger and that she wanted to have that on her in case something happened to her, is what it at least seems like to me.
Right.
Now, meanwhile, the manhunt for James did not last long. Having heard Tiana's 911 call, police strongly suspected that James was either going to flee or perhaps even attempt to harm himself, like to commit suicide. And within hours of the murder, police converged on James's house in Bloomfield and a couple of other locations that he was known to frequent, but I couldn't find where these locations were. I assume like his wherever he worked, maybe his friends or family's homes.
Sure.
And he was tracked down pretty early on the morning of February 15th, so the very next day. But I'm not sure where they tracked him down. So he's located and arrested, and news reports indicated that he was charged with not only Tiana's murder, but also for violating the restraining order and other related offenses. And what that tells me is that they had the evidence, or they were capable of getting the evidence that proved that he had been violating the restraining order.
Yes.
The whole time. It's insane. Now, James did not resist arrest. And in fact, given the overwhelming evidence and the all points bulletin out for him, he kind of had little room to run. So he just went willingly with them. And with James now in custody, the scope of the investigation turned to building a case against him. Detectives collected forensic evidence linking him to the crime. One key piece of evidence was a pair of blood-stained jeans that were found, either in James's home or another location that he had access to. Again, I couldn't find exactly where they were. And they did DNA test the blood on the jeans, and it did match Tiana's DNA. Now, they also gathered James's phone records and computer records, which likely showed his calls and like the threatening emails and everything that was sent to Tiana.
He wasn't even clever about it.
He wasn't clever about it. He really wasn't. He wasn't trying. He just genuinely wanted to get in contact with her so bad.
Yes.
And he's seeing no consequences. Mm-hmm. So why would he have to be clever about it,
True. That's such a good point.
Like, he doesn't even have to be. They're just letting him fucking get away with it. It's insane. Now, police interviewed neighbors who had heard the attack and any potential eyewitnesses who might be able to place James at the scene that night. Now, on top of that, they, of course, had Tiana herself telling the 911 operator exactly what happened. Now, Tiana's family, in their grief, now also had to start the long journey of seeking justice for her. Alvin Notice, her father, in particular, was determined to ensure that not only James would answer for his crimes, but that the failures of the system itself would be brought to light. In the immediate aftermath, however, their focus was just on Tiana's funeral and cooperating with prosecutors, making sure that they got everything that they needed to build a strong case. And the case was garnering a lot of media attention, especially locally in Connecticut. Now, it was a gripping headline.
Sure.
Because it's basically a young graduate student murdered on Valentine's Day by her ex-boyfriend that she had reported to police dozens of times. It is attention grabbing. And it was a story that provoked outrage and sorrow, not just for people who knew Tiana, but for the greater community. Many saw parallels to other domestic violence cases where restraining orders and warnings went unheeded until it was too late. Now, James Carter was soon indicted on charges of murder and violation of a restraining order in connection with Tiana's death. He pled not guilty, which meant that the case would proceed to a full criminal trial. And I'm like, I don't understand why you're not just pleading guilty. Maybe this is good because maybe he would have gotten a plea deal and he would have gotten a lighter sentence, but I just can't see where he thought that maybe he was going to get off with this. Now, with that, the wheels of justice started turning, but they turned pretty slowly, as is the case, and it took nearly 3 years for James to face a jury. During that time, he remained in custody awaiting trial, and because of the severity of the charges, he was not given the option for bail. Now, Tiana's family had to endure multiple pretrial hearings and delays, but they were steadfast in attending and keeping Tiana's memory at the forefront of everything that was happening.
This episode is brought to you by eBay. Buying parts for your car? You'll know that will it work feeling. But on eBay, buying parts is different. eBay's free returns means if it doesn't fit, or if it isn't what you expected, you just print a label, drop it off, and get your refund fast. No haggling, no stress, and at least 30 days to return any eligible item. Millions of parts, free returns. eBay. Things people love. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. Jay Kelly, the new film from Academy Award nominee Noah Baumbach. George Clooney stars as an actor confronting his past and present on a journey of self-discovery, alongside Adam Sandler as his devoted manager. Critics are calling it a declaration of love to the chaotic art of filmmaking, with the Wall Street Journal praising it as a transcendent comedy drama. Jay Kelly is now playing only on Netflix.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
This is Charlie. He's my part rescue dog, part whirlwind. Half of his breakfast always ends up on the floor. And he leaves fur everywhere. That's why I grabbed the Bissell Power Clean Fur Finder. It's cordless, powerful, and actually finds fur you don't even see. If you've got a pet like Charlie, you've got fur everywhere. The Power Clean Fur Finder gets that. Discover how Power Clean Fur Finder makes pet cleanups effortless at Bissell.com.
In October of 2011, the murder trial began in the New Britain Superior Court. Prosecutors from the Connecticut State's Attorney's Office laid out the narrative of James's obsessive harassment and Tiana's desperate attempts to get help, which culminated in the Valentine's Day murder. They presented a mountain of evidence. Jurors were shown the security camera footage, the 911 audio, the physical evidence. Prosecutors also bolstered this evidence with a detailed timeline of James's pattern of behavior in the weeks leading up to the murder. They introduced the emails and text messages that James had sent to Tiana, including the ones with threats about karma and punishment. And there was one that was like, you have to answer to God now, or something like that. And they were basically using this to establish his intent and his state of mind. They had witnesses from various police departments testify about Tiana's reports of the restraining order violations and just all of the harassment in the weeks leading up to the murder. This included officers from Plainville, from Bloomfield, and from Waterbury, where her work was. Now, one particularly telling piece of evidence was the letter that James had sent to Tiana's former employer, pretending to be Tiana harassing this person. And this was an act which Bloomfield police discovered during their investigation. And it just kind of showed the lengths that James was willing to go to harass her. And it kind of shows like what we were talking about last week. This wasn't just him, like he's lost his mind, he's gone crazy. This was strategic. He was playing chess, not checkers.
Yes.
This was well thought out. It was well planned. And he was purposefully manipulating the police reports to make it look like Tiana was the aggressor in this situation. And that's what they're showing this timeline, trying to prove the intent, because we're going to get to what his defense is in a bit. And
I'd also like to remind that the first thing that happened was the emails, and he literally says it from the beginning, like, you need to answer to God, karma's going to get you.
100%.
He knew what he was going to do.
And this is the thing, is like, I fully personally believe, and this is just my opinion, it's not fact, my opinion is wrong sometimes, but I personally believe that even without the surveillance footage, the 911 call, the bloody pants, like all of these things, I think just with the prior complaints alone, they would have had enough evidence to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt. And because look, like they went back on those emails and they tracked the IP addresses and they proved that those emails came from him. And my point is that they could have done that from the beginning. Exactly. And they didn't. Again, I am not certain when they did. I don't know if it was before or after she was murdered, but it was very obviously not done quickly, because like that was one of the first violations. Yes. And apparently they didn't have enough to arrest him before she was murdered, so they say. So like, if we operate under my opinion of this being enough evidence to convict him of murder, then it was definitely enough evidence to convict him of violating a fucking restraining order.
Yes.
And it was more than enough to determine that he was the aggressor in this situation and not Tiana. Because I do understand that they have to be careful about that. And I do understand, like, at that court hearing, why there was confusion there, because men are victims of domestic violence as well. But they need to be investigating to try and figure it out.
Right. All they did was, like, give them both a restraining order and then didn't enforce it.
Yes, exactly. And I just feel like I understand there are like limiting factors. I'm not saying every single one of these police officers is a horrible person or they didn't care about Tiana. I'm sure some of them did try and help and they were just limited. But that definitely was not the case for all of them. And I just feel like the way that she was failed, again, for me, the word that describes this case is egregious.
Yeah.
The way that she was failed by these police officers was egregious. And so, you know, while I don't want to be like, these are horrible people, I do think we have to be critical of what they did wrong here, and we have to criticize them. Now, in addition to all of the reports leading up to the murder, there was, of course, also the physical evidence. So we talked about the bloodstained jeans. There was also cell phone records that showed that James was in the vicinity of Tiana's apartment. So basically, his phone records didn't prove that he couldn't have been there, because they can't say for sure, like, oh, his phone was at Tiana's apartment, but basically it was pinging off cell towers in the area. So he could have been at her apartment, because he fucking was. But you know what I mean? Like, they can't necessarily say just based off the phone records that he was there. Now, James Carter's defense they didn't really have much to work with here when it came to claiming innocence. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and his attorney, which was a public defender by the name of Christopher Eddy, never disputed that James had stabbed and killed Tiana. It was essentially impossible for him to deny, given the 911 call and all of the other fucking evidence. So instead, the defense tried a different strategy. They argued that James should not be found guilty of murder, but rather a lesser offense due to his mental state. Specifically, they tried to claim that James had acted under, quote, extreme emotional disturbance, end quote, when he killed Tiana. Now, in Connecticut law, proving extreme emotional disturbance can potentially reduce a murder charge to a lesser manslaughter charge if the jury believes that the defendant was so emotionally overwrought that his actions, while criminal, were not premeditated murder. And it's somewhat akin to like a temporary insanity or like a heat of passion type of argument. And No, I'm over here like steaming out of my ears. No. I do agree that he is, what is the word? I do think he is emotionally disturbed.
I don't think it was an abnormal or an extreme amount at that moment because I think he just is disturbed. Also, I was thinking about this. He shows up out of the shadows and like almost immediately attacks her, right? So it's also not like she came up in his face and was screaming at him to leave and he got flustered and grabbed a kitchen knife that was right behind him and stabbed her.
He brought a knife with him too.
And waited for we don't know how long. Could have been seconds. It could have been hours.
Yes, 100%.
And then jumped out and attacked her. Like,
that is premeditated.
Absolutely.
Premeditated. And one of the cases that I think about when I think of this heat of passion defense is, and I'm so sorry, guys, I don't remember names, I don't remember details. I am going to cover this case in the next few months. But basically, this woman, she gets married to her husband. They get married at this hotel, right? Then years later, it's their anniversary. She finds out the husband is cheating on her, and she tracks his phone or something, and she finds him with his mistress at the hotel where they got married on their anniversary, and she runs him over in the parking lot. And to me, that's an example of this heat of passion argument, and like that is not what happened here. And I'm not giving an opinion on that case because, like I said, I do not remember any of the details of it. I am going to cover it, and then I'll give you guys my opinion on it. But in this case, this was strategic. This was over time. He was playing chess. He was painting Tiana as the aggressor. And now he's trying to say that it's not premeditated. When he showed up, hid in the shadows, waiting for her, and brought a murder weapon, like, come the fuck on, guys. And I know that the defense attorney is doing his job, but like, couldn't be me. Couldn't be me.
Could not, because I'd be like, dude, come on.
Come on.
Come on.
Come on. Now, to support this whole theory, the defense attorney paints James as this emotionally fragile and distraught, like, you know, poor old man over this breakup. And he highlighted that James supposedly had some positive attributes to him. He said that James was educated, well-read, artistic, and normally had a big heart and a good sense of humor. I'm going to hit it back one more time. No.
No. Normally has a big heart, except for the one time he murdered someone.
Normally has a big heart, except for his previous domestic violence charge.
That he went to jail for.
And besides his fucking stalking and harassing of Tiana and trying to paint her as the aggressor and turn it around on her, and then literally hiding in the shadows and jumping out and fucking stabbing her. So besides all that, he had a really big heart.
Yeah.
Shut the fuck up, Christopher Eddy. Get out of here. Be so for real right now. And okay, maybe he was, I don't know anything about him. Maybe he was educated. Maybe he's well-read. Maybe he's artistic. Maybe he has a good sense of humor. Who the fuck cares? Who cares?
He killed her.
It doesn't matter. It literally has nothing to do with this. It just drives me crazy. Christopher Eddy is basically just trying to like humanize him to the jury, trying to make them feel bad for him. And I'm sure that it didn't work on the jury. I wholeheartedly believe that. But the defense's implication was that James wasn't a monster. He was just a troubled man who snapped in a moment of passion. Again, disagree. However, this narrative was a tough sell, likely because it is absolute utter horseshit, and this was very obviously a premeditated murder, but they tried to sell it nonetheless. So the prosecution countered this by showing how deliberate James's actions were. Exactly what me and Katie were just bitching about. He stalked Tiana for weeks. He issued threats. He tried to hide that they were coming from him. He tried to paint her as the aggressor. And ultimately, he laid in wait with a murder weapon on Valentine's Day. And this suggested calculation and intent and premeditation. And it did not paint a picture of this sudden loss of control that the defense was trying to claim. Moreover, the sheer brutality of stabbing someone nearly 20 times and then fleeing did not square with a momentary outburst. This was an act of vengeance. This was purposeful, and he meant to kill her.
Yeah.
Now, after hearing all of the evidence, the jury deliberated for 2 full days. And in the end, they rejected the defense's argument of extreme emotional disturbance. On November 1st, 2011, the jury returned a verdict of guilty, convicting James Carter II on all counts, murder and violation of the restraining order. James, who was 30 by the time of his conviction, showed little emotion as the verdict was read. For Tiana's family, there was a sense of relief that justice was being done, though it was heartbreakingly bittersweet. Tiana's mother, Kathy, said quietly after the verdict, quote, "At least he can't hurt anyone else now," end quote. Because Yeah, the verdict, great. I'm glad he was found guilty, but it's not going to bring Tiana back.
Yep.
And the trial had just laid bare all of the ways that the system had failed Tiana. And that was painful for the family to relive. A couple of months later, in January of 2012, the case moved to the sentencing phase. James Carter faced a maximum of 60 to 65 years in prison under Connecticut law. On January 13th, 2012, he was brought before Judge Frank, I forgot about this guy's name.
It's a good one.
Frank Didabo.
Frank Didabo.
And I'm pretty sure that's how you say it. But he is brought before Judge Frank Didabo Jr., and Frank Didabo gets to decide James Carter's future. So the courtroom was packed with nearly 50 of Tiana's relatives and friends, all there to honor her memory that day. And that just shows you, like, 50 people is a lot of people. Like, try and name 50 people in your life, and that just shows you how loved she was and how important she was to all of these people. Many of them showed up wearing purple ribbons, and purple ribbons are basically like the ribbon to symbolize domestic violence awareness. And so, like, if you've been seeing some of our posts this month about, like, the Sierra Vince Foundation, you'll see a lot of purple in the post, the purple ribbons on the Sierra Vince shirt that we created for the merch, all of those things. And yeah, they showed up and they showed out, because I think one of the things that is important, I think we're trying to highlight that this isn't just about Tiana. This is about the system that failed her, and this is about all victims of domestic violence, not just Tiana. And Tiana is not the only person who has been failed by the system like this. Now, at the sentencing hearing, James opted out of being physically present in the courtroom during the emotional testimonies.
I'm sorry.
Because this is where they get to make, like, their victim impact statements and all of these things. And the judge allowed him to listen from a nearby room via a video feed after his attorney cited that James didn't want to face the public anger directly. And
why is that allowed? And he should have to face whatever anger is directed at him, because it is due. He deserves it.
I agree. And I don't know, I do not understand why Frankie Didabo would let him do this. I couldn't find any reasoning. Maybe there is a reason. Maybe he was just, like, physically refusing and fighting them off, and they were going to have to delay it otherwise, and they didn't want to delay it. I have no idea what the reasoning might be. Hopefully there's a really fucking good reason, because otherwise I think this is absolute bullshit that they let him not be present for this.
Agreed.
He should have had to look them in their fucking face while they talked about what he did to them.
Yes.
Now, this decision, of course, upset some of Tiana's family, as they wanted him there, looking them in the eyes to directly hear their words and see their faces. But ultimately, it didn't change the outcome. Now, during the sentencing hearing, they gave powerful victim impact statements. Tiana's mother, Kathy, spoke through tears about how horrendous the last few months of Tiana's life had been, with Carter terrorizing her while she begged the police for help. Kathy described the deep grief of losing her daughter, saying it felt like her heart was irreparably broken. Tiana's father, Alvin, addressed the court as well. In an incredibly poignant moment, Alvin read Tiana's poem that we had mentioned last week called Chapter Closed. So he reads this out loud to the entire courtroom, and he read Tiana's own words about breaking free from James's threats and torture. And by the time he was done reading this poem, many in the courtroom were in tears. I definitely would have been.
Oh, for sure.
Now, Alvin wanted everyone to know that Tiana knew the danger that she was in, and she tried so hard to move on and to protect herself. He also expressed hope that James would spend the rest of his life reflecting on the horror he had caused. Judge Didabo did not mince words when delivering the sentence. He called the killing a, quote, senseless, needless, and violent tragedy, end quote. Addressing James, he said, quote, you were inches from her, looking at her when you were stabbing her and causing her death. You need to be punished, and society needs to be protected, end quote.
Yeah.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs, but luckily there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku, and it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
With new, gentler scented Clorox disinfecting wipes, clean finally smells as good as it feels. on everything from lamps to ceiling fans, even on your kid's toy shark. Oh, ouch. Clorox Disinfecting Wipes, now available in crisp lemon. Find it on Amazon. Clorox, clean feels good.
The Lincoln Wishlist sales event is happening now. Here's what's on everyone's wish list. Enjoying holiday jingles with brilliant 3D audio that surrounds you? Check. Watching snow flurries through the panoramic vista roof? Check. Packing up presents with the spacious Lincoln Splitgate? Check. Everything you want. All standard on the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV. Visit your local Lincoln retailer or learn more at Lincoln.com for exceptional offers on 2025 Lincoln vehicles today.
This episode is brought to you by Greenlight. You can't solve every case for your kids, but with Greenlight, they'll have the instincts and money skills to stay out of trouble. With a Greenlight debit card and money app, parents can monitor spending and teach financial responsibility. Educate your kids as they grow, from earning allowance and tracking chores to learning how to save and invest. Start your risk-free Greenlight trial today at greenlight.com/Spotify.
With that, Judge Tadabo imposed the maximum sentence for the murder and some additional time as well for the restraining order violations. By the time that James Carter II will be eligible for release, he'll be in his late 80s or early 90s. I wasn't exactly certain on that.
Okay.
But essentially it's a life sentence for him. I mean, what is the average lifespan? 72 or something?
I think it's 75, national 75, Northeast Ohio 72.
Oh,
we don't live as long here.
Interesting. Is it the winter?
It must be. It's got to be that lake effect.
But here's the thing. I hope this man dies in prison. I'm not wishing death upon him.
No.
I am just hoping that when it does knock at his door, he is in prison and he does not see another day of freedom ever fucking again.
Right.
And that's just my hope. And I don't care if he lives till he's 105. Personally, I would never wish death upon somebody. I just hope that he is still in prison when he's 105.
Well, it worries me because you get 3 hot meals a day. There's endless exercise that you can do in prison. You don't have much to do other than work and exercise. He might really live till 100, and he gets to live 20 whole years of his life free.
Yeah.
That's a long time to be free after you murdered someone in cold blood.
Yeah, that's true.
If he's healthy and spry. I'm just saying.
I hope I'm going to look into his lineage. How long are people living in his family?
I would love to know. Does he have any heart conditions? It would just make me sleep better a little bit at night.
As a medical professional, Katie wants to know his medical history. And I respect that. But essentially, hopefully he will never see a day of freedom again in his entire life. And at the very least, if he does ever get out, he will be old and frail, hopefully, and hopefully at least physically unable to hurt anybody else. But I just don't think he should ever be let out after this. Now, the judge also formally noted that this case highlighted the need for better protections for victims of domestic violence. You think? At least I'm glad the judge recognized that.
Yeah.
And acknowledged that, Tiana's death was an absolute failure of the system.
It was preventable.
It was preventable. James's attorney made a last attempt to ask for leniency and appeal for a new trial, yada, yada, yada. But the judge flatly denied all of these motions and was like, yep, no, we're not going to do any of that. So that's nice. When given a chance to speak, James Carter reportedly declined to make any meaningful apology or statement of remorse in court. However, Alvin Notice revealed that the day after James's conviction in 2011, the family received a letter written by James from jail. And in that letter, he wrote, quote, "I apologize sincerely from my heart and soul. God forgives, and hopefully you can too. Please accept my apology." ?
Vomit.
And yeah, vomit. I say this every time we talk about any statement that the murderers make. Either they're going to deny and not say anything, and I'm like, you fucking loser. You can't even apologize. You can't even say something, whatever. But when they do say something, I am going to criticize every word of it and be like, shut the fuck up.
Fuck you. Yeah.
And it is, I want you guys to know that I realize that I am contradicting myself every time I talk about one of these. I don't care.
Yeah.
Whatever they say or don't say, it's always going to make me mad. And I stand by that every step of the way. Fuck this guy. I sincerely apologize from my heart and soul. I don't believe a fucking word of that. I don't believe you're sorry. I believe you are sorry because of the consequences that you've had to deal with.
Yeah.
I believe you wanted Tiana dead. You knew that for weeks and you planned this methodically. And then for him to say, God forgives and hopefully you can too. I don't know if Tiana's family was particularly religious or not,
Sure.
but let's say they are. For him to be like, oh, well, if you're a godly person, you should forgive me.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I'm taking from what he said.
Yeah.
And he says, please accept my apology, ? No.
No, but thank you for asking.
No, thank you for asking, actually. Please don't ask.
True.
What the fuck?
Stay
We don't
away.
accept your apology. Are you fucking kidding me? God forgives. Hopefully you can do. Please accept my apology. No. And I think God is going to be just fine with them not accepting your apology.
And it's really not a real apology. So it makes it even more, it's disgusting, is what I was going to say.
Yes.
From the start.
I agree.
Like, ew.
And here's the thing. And Alvin felt the same way. He tells the media that the family did not find this letter like compelling or credible or believable at all. And James had spent 2 years denying responsibility, and apparently he had even bragged to some acquaintances about killing Tiana. I don't know who these acquaintances were. I don't know if they were like jail informants, because remember, he's arrested like pretty soon after. Like I think it's really just hours after. Like it was early morning the next day. But like I don't know if he called people during then or who these acquaintances were, but apparently he's bragging. And as far as Tiana's loved ones were concerned, like they were not accepting this apology. They didn't buy it. And the only like appropriate place for him to be was behind bars for the rest of his life.
Absolutely.
Now, with James imprisoned, Tiana's family could finally breathe a small sigh of relief. Justice in the legal sense had been served, at least for James. But their journey was far from over. In the aftermath of the trial, Alvin Notice and Kathy Lewis, Tiana's parents, turned their grief into activism, vowing to hold the authorities accountable and to fight for reforms so that no other woman's cries for help would be ignored like Tiana's were. Now, the public outcry over this case was significant. Domestic violence advocates pointed to Tiana's story as a prime example of how restraining orders and law enforcement responses fall tragically short. In the years immediately following her death, Tiana's case became a driving force behind efforts to strengthen domestic violence laws and improve how police handle restraining order violations. Connecticut lawmakers took a hard look at the gaps in the system that Tiana's case highlighted. By 2010 and 2011, several new laws and policies were being proposed and enacted, often explicitly referencing the lessons learned from Tiana's murder when they're basically pitching them to the justice system.
Right.
Among the major reforms were electronic monitoring of high-risk offenders. So basically what they did in Connecticut is initiate a pilot program for using GPS tracking devices on domestic violence offenders who are deemed to be high risk. For example, those with multiple restraining order violations. Now, okay, if you're not listening to this order, we are recognizing the fact that you are probably a dangerous person because you don't care about the consequences. So we are going to monitor your location. And under this program, if someone like James Carter had been identified as a serious threat, a court could require him to wear like an ankle monitor, basically. Like same thing someone would wear if they were on house arrest type of deal. And the way that it worked is like if he got within a certain range of places he wasn't supposed to be, or within a certain range of her or the victim, not Tiana, but whoever the victim is in the case, the victim would then be alerted on their phone or whatever device that they have if the offender came within a certain distance of their home, their workplace, or any other protected area.
Could you imagine getting that alert? Oh my gosh, you're like, especially if you are in a situation where you were afraid for your life and then you got that alert. Oh my gosh.
But it could say,
but it's so
terrifying,
important.
but it could have saved Tiana's life.
Yes, absolutely.
She would have gotten an alert that he was
know,
at her home that night.
Our girl Tiana would have had that app open on her phone, loud as day. Like, she would have been ready if she heard
100%. 100%. And that's the thing is like, this is exactly the kind of system that could have saved Tiana's life. At least here's the thing, like it could have to an extent, because in order for him to get this ankle monitor, they have to deem him to be high risk. And in order to deem him to be high risk, they have to show multiple restraining order violations. And that's where it's like, okay, this is incredibly helpful and it can save lives, but only if it's implemented properly and appropriately by police. And that's the really important part that like I want to hone in on here. And Alvin Notice, Tiana's father, later said about this electronic monitoring system, quote, if James had a GPS on his person, Tiana would have known he was by her house and she might still be alive, end quote. Another change that came partially out of Tiana's case was better enforcement of protective orders, of restraining orders. So state lawmakers clarified and strengthened some laws requiring police to make an arrest if there is probable cause to believe that someone violated a restraining or protective order. Prior to this, there may have been some ambiguity. So, for instance, some officers might have thought that they had discretion not to arrest if the violation didn't seem serious. And I think that's where we see it in like those first emails, like the first violation where he's sending those threatening emails. That officer felt like he had the choice to use his own discretion to decide if those emails were a serious threat or not, and he deemed them to be non-threatening. Previously, there was that gray area. There was that room for ambiguity. But after Tiana's case, Connecticut mandated a more proactive approach. So if an officer sees that an order exists and the offender clearly violated it by contacting or being near the victim, an arrest must be made. And I think the difference is here, I'm not 100% sure, is that there can then be legal consequences if an arrest is not made when it should have been.
And then something happens.
Right.
Again, hopefully it's not too late.
And I think previously that hadn't been like outlined on paper in that way. I am a little bit wishy-washy on if that is the case, but we're going to kind of get to what happens in Tiana's case with those police officers who didn't take her seriously. And that's kind of where I see this change being made of them saying, hey, you thought you could decide on how you wanted to address the situation, but you don't get to decide that. And there will be legal consequences if you make the wrong choice. And I think that hadn't necessarily been outlined before.
Yeah.
So there were also expanded definitions and coverage when it came to like the rhetoric around domestic violence. So the state expanded its list of crimes and the types of relationships that could trigger protective measures. For example, in the past, dating relationships, which basically meant like you weren't an official couple, like you weren't like living together, you weren't married, you weren't like boyfriend and girlfriend for years or, you know, boyfriend, whatever it may be. They would consider that a dating relationship because you're just like casually dating this person. And previously, it was really difficult to get a protective order in a dating relationship because I don't fucking know why. But
yeah, I couldn't speculate why. Maybe just like, oh, you have your own life, so you're not like intertwined. Like you can separate yourself from this or something.
Right. Yeah. So these were now explicitly included in family violence arrest policies because that's where I believe like domestic violence laws are like the category in which they're under in the law is like domestic, like family related crimes.
Interesting.
And so now they're including dating relationships in that. And this meant that police could no longer ignore like violence or threats just because the victim and the perpetrator were quote unquote only dating. And this was kind of like an old loophole in some jurisdictions. Additionally, judges were given more latitude to issue criminal protective orders in a wider range of cases. And courts improved the process for victims to get emergency orders after hours if needed.
That's awesome.
Yes. Now, Connecticut also tightened laws to require that anyone under a restraining or protective order must surrender their firearms if they have any. This was an important safety measure because even though James used a knife, many domestic homicide cases involve guns, and keeping guns out of abusers' hands is a key focus of domestic violence law.
Yeah.
Because I should have pulled some statistics on this. Insert statistics about gun deaths and domestic violence laws. Now, lastly, and in my opinion, most importantly, I think the GPS monitor thing is going to save lives.
Yes.
But it goes back to what we said about Tiana's cases. It would have saved her life if police had taken the threats seriously.
Yes.
And I think it all goes back to, hopefully, I like to believe that these officers are good people. They want to help. They don't want anyone getting hurt. They want to help victims, and that they made mistakes here, maybe because they're uneducated. I think it went past that personally, but I'm not going to speculate on how far they went and whatever. But I like to believe that most officers are good people, and when they fail victims, it's because of a lack of education or a lack of knowledge, and they are genuinely trying to help people. And so training and awareness was one of the biggest things that the police departments focused on after Tiana's death. So the Office of the Victim Advocate, which is headed by Michelle Cruz at the time, they released a detailed report in September of 2010 analyzing Tiana's case and the missteps taken by police. And this report was actually like the major source that I used for this episode. It outlines the timeline in detail. It outlines all of the violations, all of the police reports, like summarizes what happened, everything. It was extremely helpful, and it will be linked in the sources on our website if you guys want to check it out. But not only did it outline Tiana's case, it also recommended extensive changes, including better training for police officers and court personnel on recognizing the warning signs of lethality in domestic violence situations. It pointed out some officers had displayed condescending and trivializing attitudes towards Tiana and her mother, behavior that needed to be eradicated. Connecticut Police Department subsequently updated their protocols for responding to restraining order complaints, emphasizing that each report needed to be treated with gravity and with urgency. There was also a push for improved communication between jurisdictions so that what happened with Tiana's case with Plainville, Bloomfield, Waterbury never happens again. Because if you remember, the day before her death, she went to the Waterbury police and they accused her of bringing in a fake restraining order.
Let me just forge this real quick and go, sorry.
It's okay. It's anger.
That's one of my biggest complaints about the whole thing is the miscommunication betwixt the different places.
I agree.
It's so fucked up.
I agree. And like the way that they were talking to, like, I understand we talked about the judge comparing them to Romeo and Juliet, all of these things. And I understand that maybe that judge in that moment didn't have enough information or evidence to know for sure who was the aggressor in the situation, or if it was mutual or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. But you need to realize and stop at I don't know what the situation is.
Yes.
And instead of making assumptions that are dangerous and can lead to
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
Kann du Norsk?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Wherever Bud goes, his harmonica goes with him. It's a pocket full of soul. Now he's living with prostate cancer. He asked his doctor about Xtandi enzalutamide. Xtandi 40 milligram tablets treats men with prostate cancer that has spread to other parts of the body and responds to a medical or surgical treatment to lower testosterone. Xtandi may cause serious side effects: seizure, a brain condition called PRES, allergic reactions, heart disease that can lead to death, falls and bone fractures, swallowing problems, or choking that can lead to death. Stop Xtandi and get medical help at once if your face, tongue, lip, or throat start swelling. Tell your doctor at once if you faint, have a seizure, quickly worsening headache, decreased alertness, confusion, vision problems, chest pain or discomfort, or shortness of breath. Xtandi can cause harm to an unborn baby or miscarriage. Use birth control during and 3 months after Xtandi. Common side effects include muscle and joint pain, feeling unusually tired, hot flashes, constipation, less appetite, diarrhea, high blood pressure, bleeding, falls, fractures, and headache. Talk to your doctor and visit Xtandi.com.
Retirement isn't just about closing out your career. It's mornings that begin with a sunrise instead of an alarm, and the freedom to live the life you've always dreamed of. With a New York Life financial professional, you'll have the guidance to make it real, so your years of hard work become the life you've always imagined. Your life. New York Life. More powerful together. Start today at NYL.com.
Hey, Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. You know, one of the perks about having 4 kids that you know about is actually getting a direct line to the big man up north. Mm-hmm. And this year, he wants you to know the best gift that you can give someone is the gift of Mint Mobile's unlimited wireless for $15 a month. Now, you don't even need to wrap it. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Someone dying,
which is what happened.
And like that judge, make that example because he compares them to Romeo and Juliet, and it's like you're making an assumption that this is mutual, and now you have just compared this woman and her abuser to Romeo and Juliet. Yeah. And like, do I think that was the judge's intention? No. But it's like, don't speak when you're ignorant of what the actual situation is. Like,
Exactly.
Don't make those types of comparisons. Don't accuse someone of faking a restraining order when it could be real. Like, now, all of these changes were sometimes informally referred to as part of Tiana's law. And Tiana's law isn't an actual law, but it basically just refers to a legacy of reforms, ensuring that victims' cries for help are taken seriously and that abusers who show a pattern of dangerous behavior are monitored more closely. State Senator Mae Flexer and domestic violence advocate Karen Jarmuck of the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence were among those who worked closely with Tiana's parents to get these measures passed. In interviews, Senator Flexer credited Tiana's case with convincing many lawmakers that tools like GPS tracking were necessary. Over the years, Connecticut saw a decline in intimate partner homicides, and many believe that the legal changes prompted by cases like Tiana's contributed to that positive trend. And that's amazing to hear. I'm so happy to hear that there has been a decrease in these types of cases. But beyond legal reforms, Tiana's family wasn't done. They took direct action. And in 2010, Alvin Notice and Kathy Lewis established the Tiana Angelique Notice Foundation, a nonprofit organization dedicated to educating the public about domestic violence and advocating for victims. They have spoken at schools, community centers, and law enforcement trainings, sharing Tiana's story to underscore the importance of early intervention and of just listening to victims. Alvin, who by profession is actually a prison official in Massachusetts, used his insight into the criminal justice system to push for improvements from within. Kathy has been an outspoken voice urging victims to persist in seeking help and urging authorities to never dismiss someone like her daughter again. And the Tiana Angelique Notice Foundation, the work that they do sounds very similar to me to the Sierra Vince Foundation. And if you guys are listening to our episodes in order, like as they're coming out, you heard Sierra Vince's case last week. You know that during December of 2025, we are raising money for the Sierra Vince Foundation. But I think what the Tiana Angelique Notice Foundation is doing is very similar. I am going to put both links to both foundations in the show notes. Even though we're raising money for the Sierra Vince Foundation, if you feel connected to Tiana's case, if you live in Connecticut, whatever the reason may be, and you would rather make a donation there, the link is going to be in the show notes. I highly encourage it, and I'm sure that everyone at the Sierra Vince Foundation would be happy to hear as well the work that the Tiana Notice Foundation is doing. So
absolutely. Yes.
Now, the Notice family also sought accountability from police departments that they felt had failed Tiana. So in 2011, around 2 years after Tiana's death, Alvin Notice filed a wrongful death and negligence lawsuit against the towns of Plainville, Waterbury, and Bloomfield, and specifically against several police officers from each department. The lawsuit essentially argued that these officers had ample opportunity to arrest James Carter or otherwise intervene in the weeks before the murder. But through negligence or just incompetence, they did not do so, thereby allowing James the chance to kill Tiana. It was a bold and emotionally charged legal action. Police generally have broad immunity in how they conduct investigations. So suing them successfully is incredibly difficult. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about how they changed this law to get rid of the gray area. And now it's like, hey, if there is probable cause, you must make an arrest. If someone has violated a restraining order, there's no more ambiguity. If you do not do it, you will be held accountable.
And look here, we're holding these people accountable right here.
Exactly. And I think part of the reason that that was able to be underscored in that way is because of the outcome of this lawsuit. Because spoiler alert, they win this, or there's a settlement, but the police are held accountable for the mistakes made.
I love that Alvin just like said it with his chest. He just stood up and was like, fuck all of y'all.
Yeah.
Like, you're all responsible for this.
Yes, and good for them. Good. They should, because that's the thing is like, these police officers, would these ones maybe have made changes because of the mistakes they made because they don't want to be failing victims? Yeah, maybe. But I also think you have to instill a little bit of fear of like consequences of actions. And so I think this sets a precedent that tells every other police officer in the country, there is no more gray area. If you make the wrong choice when it comes to a restraining order and someone is hurt because of it, you can be held legally and financially responsible, or the police department, whatever it may be. So The wrongful death lawsuit, it did take a few years to go through the court system, but in April of 2014, it culminated in a stunning verdict. A Hartford civil jury found that multiple police officers were negligent in their handling of Tiana's case. In particular, the jury decided that 2 Plainville officers, Officer Mark Conoy and Sergeant Richard Marquise, were not protected by governmental immunity because their conduct was, say it with me, egregious, and that their negligence contributed to Tiana's death. They also found negligence on the part of at least 2 Waterbury officers, and the claims against the Bloomfield police, however, had been dismissed. They also found negligence on the part of at least 2 Waterbury officers. The claims against the Bloomfield police had been dismissed by an earlier judge, and Waterbury's town government had actually reached a modest settlement with the Notice family prior to trial. Now, the jury awarded $10 million in damages to Tiana's estate for the failure of police to enforce her restraining order and protect her.
Wow.
And huzzah to that jury. And like I said, this is an almost unprecedented outcome. And it sent a clear message that law enforcement could be held financially accountable if they negligently ignore a domestic violence victim's pleas for help. So when the verdict was announced, Alvin told the press, quote, "We view this as justice for Tiana. Somebody finally paid attention to what was going on with her," end quote. And I don't know for certain, but I assume that this is a reference back to what Tiana said to police the day before she was killed. Yeah. What is it going to take for you guys to do something? For me to be dead? That's not verbatim, but something along those lines. And Alvin is saying it didn't even just take for her to be dead. It took a civil trial for them to be held accountable and for them to pay attention.
That's such a great point, too, because she died and they still were just going to go about like the normal everyday processes that led to this in the first place. Right. If nobody stood up and was like, hey, you guys fucked up.
And holding them legally responsible is the best way to wake somebody up. Like, if that's not ice water poured on your face, I don't know what is. So even with that, I think it's important to recognize that no amount of money could ever bring Tiana back. And though the family felt validated that a jury of citizens agreed the police had failed her, they still lost their daughter.
Yeah.
The case prompted a lot of soul searching in the Connecticut police departments, which I think needed to be done, and I'm glad to hear that they are doing it. Some officers and municipal leaders pushed back, though, saying it was unfair to expect police to predict an estranged boyfriend's murderous intent.
I want to know whose lips that came from.
I would too. And like, do they know the details of the case?
Right.
Because to me, it seems pretty fucking obvious that he was harassing Tiana. If they had just looked into it a little bit, it was pretty obvious that he was violating these restraining orders. No one's asking you to get out your crystal ball and predict the future. What they're asking you to do is recognize when someone violates a restraining order and implement the consequences outlined by law.
Yeah.
And if that isn't literally the job of police officers, then what is?
That's not predicting the future. That's not guessing intent. He's proving to you in real time what he wants to do. He wants to harass her at the very least. And you want them to react to it appropriately, and they didn't. We're not asking you to look into the future. We're also not asking you to be proactive about it, which these new changes, I feel like, have definitely made it so that it's more proactive. But it's not about the future. It's about what you're doing right now. This guy is violating the protective order so many times, and nobody did anything.
No one was like, oh, these police should have stopped her murder.
Right.
What they should have done is implement the consequences of violating the restraining order as outlined by the law. And that possibly could have stopped her murder.
Right.
And maybe even if they did, let's say they arrest him, maybe he's not convicted. Let's say they arrest him, he's convicted, but I don't know, maybe he serves a couple months in jail or whatever it may be, he's on probation, whatever it may be, maybe he still ends up going and killing her. It's possible. But no one's asking you to for you to sit down, first violation, and be like, he's probably going to kill her. All we're asking you to do is look into it, realize, because the evidence was there, that he had violated the restraining order, and do your job.
Yeah.
We're not asking you, you're not Melisandre with your crystal ball. You're an officer with a badge, and this is your job.
Yes.
So Those are my thoughts and feelings on it. What about you guys? Now, it has been more than a decade since Tiana Notice lost her life, but her legacy clearly endures. Like I said, the Tiana Angelique Notice Foundation continues to hold events and provide resources to victims. Her story has been featured on tons of true crime shows, true crime podcasts, and in domestic violence awareness campaigns, ensuring that people around the country and around the world really learn from the mistakes made and the reforms that followed. In Connecticut, domestic violence victims today have access to GPS notification systems, to victim advocates, and law enforcement protocols that simply did not exist in 2009. Thanks in part to the changes spurred by Tiana's case. They now have this access. For Tiana's family, every Valentine's Day is a painful reminder of what they lost. Kathy Lewis says that she feels an immeasurable void without her daughter and that her heart will never be whole again until she's, quote, reunited with Tiana in heaven.
Oh my God, that breaks my heart.
I can't even imagine the feeling of just, and it was like, Tiana wasn't the only one begging police for help. Like her parents were too. Like Kathy talked to them the day before and she basically, what did she say to that? She said something to the officer like, if something happens to my daughter, you better move to another planet or something.
Another planet, she said.
And that is Mama Bear. Like, I love that. And I hope that officer did move to another fucking planet. Okay? Now, Alvin has said that while nothing can bring Tiana back, he finds purpose in fighting for others in her name. So whether that's through speaking out, through changing laws, or even just offering support to other families who have suffered similar tragedies, they have truly ensured that Tiana's death was not in vain. Tiana Angelique Notice will be remembered as a bright, talented young woman who had so much ahead of her. She was working. She had a master's degree on the horizon. She had dreams and goals to achieve. She was someone who loved and was loved deeply by her family. She will also be remembered for her courage. She recognized the danger that she was in, and she fought with every tool available to save herself, even as authorities failed to listen. In her final act, by calling 911 and naming her killer, Tiana made sure that James Carter II would face justice. And in the years since, her voice has continued to resonate, influencing laws and attitudes, and hopefully preventing other women from meeting the same fate. So I hope that we can all honor Tiana's memory together by learning from her story and ensuring that when someone cries out for help, we answer before it's too late. And with that, I just want to say, rest in peace, Tiana.
Yeah.
And this is like, we talked about it in the last episode. I think I kept saying last week this whole episode. It was 2 days ago for you guys. I apologize.
Oh, yeah. We're doing a twofer.
I'm doing a twofer this week, but we talked about it in the last episode. I don't remember what I was going to say we talked about, but I wanted to sum up.
I don't think you got started.
I didn't. I got too distracted by the 2-day thing. But really what I want to say about this case in this month is really what I want to stress to you guys is that domestic violence can look so different. Like it can look like Sierra Vince's story, who I shared that story with you guys last week, where there weren't these egregious signs of violence. There were small, subtle signs, very small red flags of just like toxic and controlling behavior that led up to her death. There are cases like Tiana's where it is not small, it is not subtle, it is threatening. She knew she was in imminent danger. Sierra's mother, Tamara, in last week's case talked about how Sierra never saw this coming. She did not realize that she was in danger. And that is obviously opposite from Tiana's case. Next week, we are going to talk about a male survivor of domestic violence and how he got, entrapped, because a lot of people question, well, if you're a man, you're physically stronger, how could you be abused?
Yeah.
And his case looks very different from Tiana's and Sierra's. And that's what I want to get across to people is every case of domestic violence, emotional abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, every single case is different.
Yes.
So just because you hear a story and it doesn't sound just like your relationship.
¿Hablas español?
Sprichst du Deutsch?
If you used Babbel, you would. Babbel's conversation-based techniques teaches you useful words and phrases to get you speaking quickly about the things you actually talk about in the real world, with lessons handcrafted by over 200 language experts and voiced by real native speakers. Babbel is like having a private tutor in your pocket. Start speaking with Babbel today. Get up to 55% off your Babbel subscription right now at babbel.com/Spotify. Spelled BABBEL.com/Spotify. Rules and restrictions may apply.
Chronic spontaneous urticaria, or chronic hives with no known cause.
It's so unpredictable. It's like playing pinball. Itchy red bumps start on my arm, then my back. Sometimes my legs. Hives come out of nowhere. And it comes and goes. But I just found out about a treatment option at treatmyhives.com. Take that, chronic hives. Learn more at treatmyhives.com.
Doesn't mean that what's happening to you is not abuse or domestic violence.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to say, which this is not a case that we covered this month in December, but in episodes 50 and 51, we covered the case of Victoria Cillier, who was married to a man for years and years, and he was emotionally abusive and verbally abusive, financially abusive, but he never hit her. He was never, ever, ever physically violent with her until he tried to kill her.
Oh my God.
She luckily survived. He tried 2 different times to kill her, one by causing a gas leak in her house while their children were home, and she had just given birth to their son.
Wow.
And then he did it again by messing with the lines on her parachute because she was a skydiver, and she fell 4,000 feet to the ground, reached a top speed of 65 miles per hour, and hit the ground and survived.
Wow.
Yes. And here's the thing is, again, I really want to stress, he never hit her before that. Mm-hmm. He never laid a hand on her before trying to kill her. So if you think, maybe there's some verbal abuse going on. He's calling me names. He's telling me I'm worthless. He's telling me this, that, or she. This could go for anybody. But that doesn't mean that you're not in danger.
Right.
A lack of physical violence does not mean that you are not in danger. And it doesn't mean that physical violence isn't coming. Right. Even if you've been with this person for years and years and years, like these things tend to escalate.
Almost always.
Almost always,
I would say.
So that's where I tried to pick cases that are going to give you a different view of what domestic violence can look like, because it can look very, very different.
Yeah.
And yeah, I hope that you guys are finding these stories engaging, finding them compelling. I hope that you can share them with people in your lives. I hope they're helpful. Like I said last week, we are going to have some experts in domestic violence issues on the podcast later this month. Again, I still don't know the exact date, but they are coming. So if you have any questions that you think they might be able to help us answer, I'm going to ask them about things like, what are the steps you should take if you're in an abusive relationship and you're trying to leave? How can you do so safely? What should we do if we think someone we love is in an abusive relationship? Mm-hmm. What should we do if we think someone we know might be the abuser?
Yeah.
Questions like that. So if you guys have any questions, put them in the comments. Send me an email at atrialbypodcast@gmail.com. Send me a DM, whatever it may be. I will kind of put all of those questions together. And then just a reminder that during the month of December 2025, we are raising money for the Sierra Vince Foundation. Again, I told her story last week, so if you haven't heard it, you can check that episode out. I'll be donating 50% of my TikTok creator fund revenue, 50% of my podcast ad revenue, and 100% of merch profits. And then I also have a link in all of the show notes and in our link tree to where you can donate to the Sierra Vince Foundation directly. But again, if you really connected with Tiana's story for any reason and you'd rather donate to the Tiana Angelique Notice Foundation, do that too. I think both foundations would agree. We're just trying to raise awareness to these issues and educate people, and both foundations are doing that. So, yeah.
Amazing. It's amazing that you're doing this.
Thank you. It's amazing that everybody listening has gotten the podcast to the point where I'm able to do something like this. So this is really all thanks to you guys. I cannot thank you enough. Like, I genuinely appreciate you guys listening every week and like telling your friends, and some people post us on their stories, things like that. I cannot thank you enough. And I hope to every year do like a December giving campaign where we're raising money for some, different foundation or whatever it may be every year. In the future, hopefully the podcast is going to be growing over time and making me more money. So it might not be 50% every time if one day I'm living off the podcast. But, I really hope that every year this is going to be our first annual December giving campaign. So.
Huzzah to you for using your platform.
Huzzah to the listeners for giving me a platform.
Yeah. That's really great.
I couldn't do any of this without you guys, so I truly appreciate it. And I know like everyone at the Sierra Vince Foundation is really excited about it and really appreciates it too.
Good.
So with that, I think court is adjourned for the day. Thank you again, Katie, for listening to me again.
Why don't you have a gavel?
You are correct. I need one. You are correct. That's a good question.
Christmas is coming.
Oh, Katie's going to give me a gavel for Christmas. Yay. Okay. All right. Thank you guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.